Hello and welcome to Irish Science Fiction. My name is Brian Sexton and you're about to, if you hang around, listen to chapter 42 of the story Nancy Good Aim, the Space Ranger. So a hen, it's a daw, it's a tree, and away we go. In the town of Sozniacks, on the planet of Jupiter, directly outside the Sozniacks garrison and inside of a rocket that had landed there, a question was asked. It was, "Are ye not going to join the Sozniacks?" The question was asked by a stocky male Jupiterian who was sitting with his back to one of the two large floor-to-ceiling windows that ran down the length of the passenger rocket. He was asking for the second time if Nancy, Bart, Habon and Shenobble intended joining the ranks of the Sozniacks. This was despite the fact that they were among 9 passengers seated in the back of a Sozniak transport on their way to Sozman City to begin training in the Sozniak Academy for useful service. And this was also despite the fact that Nancy, Bart, Habon and Shenobble had just received an introductory lecture/warning from the 3 Sozniak crew of the rocket, who were now seated at the front of the transport ignoring the 9 passengers. The introductory lecture that Nancy, Bart, Habon and Shenobble had got went like this. "Do any of you 4 take drugs? It's important that you don't, because we've had a lot of luminary problems with the other pastoral recruits, like yourselves. We won't stand for Sozniacks who are out of their minds. We very much insist that all recruits are within their minds when serving the Sozniacks." "You're off your heads if you think that," said Habon. To be fair to both Habon and Shenobble, they did well to limit their response to that one statement and quietly file in through the open door of the transport rocket that landed at the front entrance to the nondescript, seemingly empty Sozniacks Sozniak garrison. Now, to call a Sozniak recruit transport a rocket would be an exaggeration. By rocket standards, they're slow and awkward. They have 2 tube-shaped combustion engines attached to the base of the sides and extending the length of their cylindrical body. These are, in general terms, useless, and the power of propulsion and everything else generally comes from a small alderon crystal shard sitting in a box at the front of the vehicle. The engines do provide some additional thrust in a tailwind, but are really only 2 of 3 modifications to the rockets, formerly known as Levogs, for the purpose of identifying them as Sozniak property. The third thing is a picture of Sozman himself painted onto the floor. The picture chosen for the craft Nancy, Bart, Habon and Shenobble had boarded was of Sozman dressed in bright clothes and carrying luggage. Both Habon and Shenobble took great care to dig their heels into the image of his face and scuff the image in general as they walked to their seats. The 3 Sozniak guards saw but ignored this. Habon looked at the guards and gave the ground several swings of her thick, muck-covered boots to make sure she knew they were ignoring it, shrugged and sat down. "Heh," she said. Inside, Nancy, Bart, Habon and Shenobble saw 5 other Jupiterians seated on 2 benches that ran the length of the 2 glass windows that made up the side walls of the cylindrical airplane with a wing-shaped rocket that would take them to Sozman City. The 3 Sozniak crew followed Nancy, Bart, Habon and Shenobble into the rocket and walked to seats at a dashboard/flight control panel at the front. Nancy was not sure why 2 of the Sozniaks had left the seats in the first place, as they had done nothing but nod enthusiastically when a third gave the anti-drug lecture and nod sagely when Nancy pointed out that Honourable Flunk was owed money for recruiting 3 new Sozniaks, and for one of them to say, "I can tell which 2 only count as 1. "Are ye joining the Sozniacks?" asked the stocky Jupiterian for a third time. "Yes," said Nancy. "Me too." Nancy nodded and smiled. "That's why I got this transport," explained the Jupiterian. Nancy nodded again. She was not sure what to do with the obvious piece of information except to politely accept it. "See Sozman there," said the Jupiterian, pointing to the slightly scuffed, brightly clothed Jupiterian leader painted onto the floor. "I wonder where he was off to at that time. Probably somewhere nice." Nancy nodded again. "It'd have to be somewhere nice," agreed the Jupiterian to himself. "Probably somewhere like Tor and Galump." The Jupiterian then fell silent. The back door of the transport hinged shut and the rocket began to silently lift into the air. This gave Nancy, Bart, Habon and Shenobble a view of the roof of the Sozniak garrison, which was flat, with a very impressive likeness of Sozman's head painted onto its dark metallic surface. The craft began to pick up pace. "Lads, you forgot to turn on the engine!" shouted a small, wrinkled, grey-haired recruit sitting opposite Nancy. "So what?" yelled one of the 3 Sozniak crew seated facing forward at the front of the rocket. "So what? Is that I'd never forget that, and I'll be coming for your jobs, lads, if you keep that up," shouted the small, wrinkly Jupiterian. "Just so you know, that's what's going to happen." One of the 3 crew walked to the back of the rocket and lifted a panel on the floor and reached in. This was followed by a loud crack, which was followed by a low rhythmic thumping and the appearance of smoke from the 2 tube-shaped engines just visible at the base of the glass side walls. The crew member stood up and walked back, throwing a dirty look at the moderately ambitious recruit as he did so. "Don't look at me like that," sneered the Jupiterian. "I was doing you a favour. I wonder will we end up in Tor and Galump?" wondered the stocky Jupiterian aloud. On a Sozniak wage! No chance, noted the moderately ambitious wrinkly Sozniak recruit sitting next to him. You'll be lucky to get to spend a wet weekend in Ballyguffin. One of the three recruits sitting opposite Nancy, Bart, Habon and Shenobble pointed to Bart and said, Helgalula Flappadon! This inspired two others to laugh loudly. Outside, the roofs of Tabernac had disappeared from view and were replaced by a lush purple and green landscape and then water. Nancy stood up and looked out of both of the floor-to-ceiling transport window/walls of the Sozniak transport. The horizon seemed impossibly far away in every direction, and the sea below seemed to stretch infinitely far beyond where she could have expected the horizon to be. The Sea of Uncertainty, explained Habon. How big is it? Asked Nancy. Difficult to tell. Nobody's really sure, replied Habon. Nancy nodded and sat down. The view was the same in every direction, and standing only gave her an insight into more of the same. Sozman would be sure, suggested the stocky Jupiterian recruit after a brief period of silence. Probably, said Habon, but he still wouldn't have a clue. He's infallible. He has all the clues, said the stocky recruit. Where are you from? Asked Habon. Buellacallan, said the Jupiterian. We're all from Buellacallan. That figures, muttered Habon. The three Jupiterians that had been sniggering resumed a low intermittent snigger, broken only by an occasional finger point to Bart. Helgilla, said one. Flap it on, sniggered another. What's up with your buddies? Asked Bart to the stocky Jupiterian. Oh, they reckon you look like someone who came from Bundrosna. The word Bundrosna was followed by loud laughter from all five of the recruits. Are they looking for a scrap? Asked Bart. I don't think so, said the stocky Jupiterian. Because I'll give them one. Are any of ye looking for a fight? Asked Bart. The five Jupiterian recruits sitting opposite Nancy, Bart, Habon and Shenobble all looked to each other. Who were you asking? Asked the smaller, wrinkly, moderately ambitious Jupiterian. I don't know, said Bart. Whichever ye want to fight. No, whichever two of ye want to fight. The interior of the craft fell briefly silent. Outside, the ocean below changed colour and high-altitude grey clouds began to appear in the bright blue sky above the rocket. Ah, to hell with it. I'll fight three together. Whichever three ye want. I don't mind. Bart, we've a job to do, reminded Nancy quietly. Balls to the job. Sure, that skinny-looking outfit over there sat next to the fat fella said the pay is crap. You don't even get enough money to go to Turbalgaloni or whatever it's called. Tor and Galump, and it's always sunny there, offered the stocky Jupiterian recruit sitting opposite Nancy. How would you know? Said one of the other recruits. He'd know more than you, said Bart, who then stood up and flicked an open palm out over the 3 metre of floor depicting Sozman Barkstapel and his suitcases and towards the 5 Jupiterian recruits opposite. Keep it down back there! We don't allow fighting on board! Yelled one of the 3 uniformed Sozniacks at the front of the rocket. Shut up, you, said Habon. Do you want me to turn the rocket around? Asked the Sozniak. No, said Nancy. Keep going, said Habon. I don't give a shite what you do, said Bart. And that goes for the rest of ye too. He then sat down and asked, What's wrong with being from Bundrosna? To anybody and nobody. Nothing, replied the stocky Jupiterian. It's a compliment. It means you're good looking. Then why are they laughing? Asked Bart. They're just excited about visiting Sozman City and joining the Sozniacks. We all are, explained the stocky Jupiterian. Bunch of dorks, muttered Bart loudly. Habon, Shenobble and the wrinkly Jupiterian all nodded in agreement, and then watched as the clouds increased in size and number until all was visible out of the window was a swirling mass of grey mist. The rocket cruddled and shenankled. It then rocked from side to side and the stocky Jupiterian vomited. The 4 other Jupiterians were hard to read, but Nancy saw a glimpse of controlled fear in the face of one of the crew. Outside, the swirling mist gave way to patchy clouds. The rocket darted in and out of the clouds. Rain streaked the window, and beyond the rain, the rounded haluntal caps of the Hoblagraniker mountain ridge darted by. Every so often, the cabin was plunged into darkness as the rocket drove its way through a particularly dark cloud. This seemed to slow the progress and cause it to drop in altitude. Or at least that was what Nancy estimated to have happened. She looked to Bart and then to Habon and then to Shenobble, but all 3 had fallen asleep. The movement of the rocket causing them to slump sideways or rock back and forth, but not to stay awake. One exceptionally large dark cloud caused a huge loss in altitude, and the rocket dropped into some sort of canyon, the walls of which seemed to be made of layers and layers of artificially constructed dwellings. Intermittent lights appeared within the constructed walls, but the speed of the rocket did not allow Nancy a good view of what she was seeing. If she had got a better view, she would have been looking into Jupiterian history. Civilizations built on civilizations. At the top was the Hoblagraniker era, a maze of metal and stone constructions several stories deep. And at the very top was a veneer of Sozniak rule, its thin application already beginning to crack, and into which the rocket barreled noisily. Track! Crump! Badadong! Stump! Doink! The final doink heralded the rocket coming to a stop, and one of the Sozniacks shouting, "We're here, away the lot of ye!" "What?" asked the stocky Jupiterian recruit. "Out you get!" said the Sozniak. The large 3-metre square rear door of the rocket hinged open from its base to reveal a dark musty platform surrounded by dark musty metal and stone buildings, separated by alleyways, and in the distance more metal and stone buildings. "Where are we supposed to go now?" asked the wrinkly older Jupiterian. "No idea," said one of the Sozniaks. "We're only paid to pilot the transport shuttle. I thought you were the smart one coming for our jobs. Off you go, so figure it out. Our work is done now, so bugger off the lot of ye. We're on break." Nancy, Bart, Habon, Shenobble and the 5 Jupiterians stepped from the rocket and onto the dark metal platform the rocket had battered and plonked itself on top of. They were immediately met with a burst of light which incinerated the stocky, eager Jupiterian recruit. A second burst of light incinerated and put an end to the modest ambitions of the wrinkly Jupiterian recruit. "You are unauthorized to be here! Stop or we'll shoot!" yelled a voice. A third beam of light darted across the platform but failed to make contact with anything and fizzled away into the murk. Nancy immediately loaded a bolt into her crossbow and scanned all around. "We're already shooting," said a voice. Nancy honed in on the source. It came from one of a half-dozen uniformed Jupiterians standing at the edge of the platform and surrounding the formerly 9 and now 7 recruits. A bolt from her crossbow found its way to the head of one that had been blocking one of the alleyways. "Quick," she said. "Follow me." Bart, Habon and Shenobble did, which meant all 4 of them found themselves hurrying along a dark alleyway beyond the prone, lifeless body of a uniformed Sozniak. The 3 Sozniak recruits did not, which meant they were rapidly and violently incinerated. "They're killing their own people," said Nancy. "That doesn't surprise me," said Habon. "Why didn't you tell us?" said Bart. "None of us wanted the surprise either, especially not those knobheads we were in the shuttle with. They might have been dogs, but I doubt they wanted to be dead." "I'd say that was just a mistake," noted Shenobble. "You heard the lads in the shuttle. None of them have a clue of what's going on. They probably thought we were out to kill Sozman or something." "We are, you big dope," said Habon. "I know that. It was a figure of speech." "You're a figure of speech, Shenobble Unterwackle." "Quiet," said Nancy. "This way." And that was it for the afternoon of the 7th day of the first human expedition to another planet. 5 dead Sozniak recruits, 1 dead Sozniak patrol officer, a crossbow, European Space Agency Mission Specialist Bart McMurrow, European Space Agency Mission Specialist Nancy Goodame McGinley, an underground army of sorts, the outstanding recruitment fee for 3 Jupiterian recruits, a dark extraterrestrial city street, and the last remaining copy of the Book of Bonglan, adrift on the Sea of Uncertainty, on Jupiter. Okay, folks, thanks for listening for that. It's been a bit of a struggle the last 2 weeks getting this together, just time-wise. So hopefully the next one will be a small bit better and prove the standard, and you'll stick with it. And if you have been sticking with it from the very start, which is 42 episodes ago, thank you very much, and chat soon.